who's here, my friend. It's Andy Borowitz, New York Times bestselling author, co-creator of the hit show Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, award-winning comedian, and he has the Borowitz Report on Substack, which is wildly popular, top 10. Go to borowitzreport.com. Andy, it's April Fool's Day. Could have a better person to join, I think, than you. You're a comedian, and you're also very smart, so it's great to chat with you.
Well, thank you, Dean. But it's weird for me because every other day of the year I'm making shit up. So I don't really know. I don't really know what to do on April Fool's except maybe tell the truth, which maybe we'll do that today. That'll be our little
I,
twist.
I think that's important. Let me ask you right at the top. Does MAGA hate us for our freedoms? Because we were told Al Qaeda hates us for our freedoms, and MAGA and Al Qaeda, and I'm getting a sense that they have the same. I'm not even kidding. I think Al Qaeda and MAGA both are anti-democratic, and both are not fond of the freedoms that we love here in America. They want to subscribe to their view of the world, no different. And I hate to be honest. I mean, January 6th was not 9/11, but it was a terrorist attack on U.S. soil against our capital. So I mean, there's something going on here that I see that's really unnerving.
I like that you said there's something going on here because that's what Trump always says. Whenever he wants to unsettle, he says there's something going on.
And by the way, Andy, before you respond, Andy and I used to do comedy a lot. Were during George Bush's time.
Yes.
So we talked about the war on terror, like the emotion and that kind of stuff. We were in many, many shows together. So it's come back. I'm using the same language. The MAGA hates us for our freedoms.
Yes. Well, it was also, I mean, I want to just do a little flashback to those days, which now seem so innocent
and adorable.
We were being attacked by foreign adversaries instead of domestic ones. But I remember that George Bush referred to it actually as the war on terror. It was that's how I pronounced it. And I remember you had a joke about how he pronounced Al Qaeda, which I really loved. You said it was like he pronounced it El Qaeda, which made it sound like a Mexican restaurant. I do remember.
El Qaeda's, that's right. We got
El
the fajitas at El Qaeda's. Exactly.
So I have been coincidentally, Dean, thinking quite a bit about this topic because the MAGA Republicans are usually compared to the Taliban. They're sometimes called the Taliban, like the Tea Party. But they're very anti-woman, much like the Taliban. They're anti-education. The Taliban wants to close schools, mainly for women, but we want to close schools for everybody. We're a little bit more equal opportunity in our anti-education views. When I say we, I mean MAGA, of course. But the terror group that MAGA has been reminding me of recently hasn't been so much the Taliban as it's been as George W. Bush would say, Al Qaeda, because if you remember that tragic day, September 11th,
sure,
the whole point of slamming those planes into those towers was to disrupt the American economy. Am I correct? I mean, he
certainly
was
part of it.
I mean, he was, yeah. I mean, it was terror, of course. He was trying to strike terror into people's hearts, but he felt that if he attacked this icon of American capitalism, the World Trade Center, and brought it down, that would destroy Wall Street and everything else. Little did he know that George W. Bush would respond the way Republicans always do, with massive tax cuts for the rich. So it didn't really work out that way. But what I'm seeing with Donald Trump in his first 70 or 71 days in office is really like he's doing stuff that Osama bin Laden must be seething with envy over, because everything he's doing is designed to destroy the American economy. These tariffs, of course, the massive uncertainty that he's injecting into the world financial system, which everybody says is terrible for investment. I mean, investors like certainty, and getting rid of very valuable laborers in our economy, the migrant agricultural workers. People in the farm sector say they cannot survive without these people to work. And one of the ironies of this whole business of getting rid of the foreign workers that were supposedly stealing our jobs and taking our jobs away from Americans, not only do Americans not want these jobs, Americans are not good at these jobs. I mean, if you talk to farmers, they will tell you, I have tried to hire an American. They suck. They say it's too hot. They get tired. So, I mean, I don't really know who's going to pick the fruit and the avocados. I mean, Eric and Don Jr., I have no idea who's going to do the job. So really, if you look at what Trump is doing in a vacuum, it's absolutely what Osama bin Laden wanted to do, destroy the economy, except he seems to be doing a better job of it. It seems much more efficient.
Do you think it's fair to call him Donald bin Laden going forward?
Donald I like that. Donald Bin
Donald
Laden.
Bin Laden. That
Let's get that going.
I've been calling him that since January 6th. And now you've just made it all. But look, Al Qaeda hated us for our freedoms. Look what MAGA and the Trump regime has done since they've gone in here. And even the last few years, banning books that don't approve
Right.
of, banning, if they could, they would ban marriage equality, but certainly they ban use of the word gay, transgender. They have a whole jihad going against the transgender community. Like they want to eliminate and erase them. The the freedoms of dissent. I've never seen more of an effort from students to law firms to corporations, the PBS, NPR, ABC, you name it. I mean, this is really an onslaught that you're right. If Bin Laden could have done this, he's like, we don't have to have a plane. We do this from inside. Like, you don't need a plane. You
Just
could
send
just do it
in
all legally, right? Send in Trump.
just send in Donald Trump. By the way, it seems, what you're making some very serious points here, so it seems unfair for me to distract the audience from the
Please
serious
do
points you're
whatever.
making. But you know what Donald Trump called 9/11, right?
What was it?
7/11.
Oh no. Oh,
He
I saw. I
he
think I
did.
saw that.
Yeah, it's
And
on YouTube.
he
Google Donald Trump 7/11, and it will say, when those planes attacked the World Trade Center on 7/11. I mean, it's a wonderful moment. I realize I'm distracting a little bit from the
That's
series
fine. We
you're
have the
making.
time. It's radio. It's long
But
form. Go
I
ahead.
mean, you know, if we one of the things you didn't really mention, or maybe you did in that onslaught, that cavalcade you just went down, DEI is, of course, racist, but it's really very strongly misogynist. I mean, this is a very misogynist regime, much like the Taliban or Al Qaeda. It's really trying to remove women from the workforce. I mean, that's part of destroying women's reproductive freedoms, but also the whole DEI thing is a way really to fire a whole bunch of women. I mean, that's a big part of it. And, the embrace of like Andrew Tate, the Tate brothers, and the Manosphere. I mean, it's so over the top, the hatred and fear of women. I will say that at least it's very on brand for Donald Trump. I mean, this guy,
Right.
I have to be careful not to say something that George Stephanopoulos said, because God knows I don't want to be sued for defamation. But there was a very unfortunate outcome in a trial he had involving E. Jean Carroll. I'll
Hmm.
just be a little elliptical there. There were some comments that he made on Access Hollywood. It's a very misogynist regime. And I'll tell you another way you can tell how misogynist they are. You can tell when Donald Trump does not take a job in his administration seriously because he appoints a woman to it. That's like the Department of Education. He had Betsy DeVos. Remember Betsy of
Sure, of course.
Amway fame?
Yep.
Betsy DeVos. And who does he replace Betsy DeVos with in Trump 2.0? Linda McMahon of World Wrestling Entertainment. And I thought it was really interesting. A very sad end to a brilliant political career happened last week with one Representative Elise Stefanik. That was another case of him appointing somebody to a job that he clearly didn't think was important, ambassador to the United Nations. I mean, Trump, if ever there was somebody who didn't care about the United Nations. Now, George W. Bush, as you and I recall from our days doing comedy about 9/11, George W. Bush didn't take the UN very seriously because he invaded Iraq, even though pretty much everybody in the world thought that was an illegal thing to do, bad idea. But you really know that Trump is not enamored or interested in the UN because he appointed a woman. That's just how you can
That's how
tell.
you, and I'm chatting with our friend Andy Borowitz. But Andy, going back to 9/11, and by the way, Andy said we did jokes about 9/11. We didn't do jokes about 9/11. We did jokes about the
George W.
consequence,
Bush.
what came after it. It
Yeah,
wasn't like,
we were, as I recall, we were not on stage on 9/11 doing jokes about 9/11. We did do a lot of jokes about people like Tom Ridge,
sure.
the color-coded,
Yeah, remember that.
terror threats, and George W. Bush. But go on, getting back to the motherlode of comedy, 9/11. Yes.
Right, right. The mother, but when you look back at George Bush, I can't remember what it was like to feel powerless when he was waging a war in Iraq. Remember? But how did he get there? That 70% of Americans, by the time we got to the war, believe Saddam Hussein was involved in 9/11. And that was from lies by Bush and Cheney saying
Right.
Saddam Hussein and 9/11 over and over and over again. And And that actually influenced all Americans. It wasn't just Republicans. This was a time when we weren't as polarized yet. So this brings it away to Greenland. I just saw a poll Sunday, CBS. Only like 30 something percent of Americans want to take Greenland. But guess what? 60% of Republicans, slightly more than 60%, think we should take Greenland. And that's because Trump just saying he didn't campaign on it. He didn't make a case for it. They go, oh, our leader wants it, so let's go aboard. And that's the number's going to go up. It'll go to 80 and 90 because it becomes an article of faith. And what they're at, there are little events when they're talking about things. And Greenland's going to be ours, and they're going to cheer. They have no idea what it is, where it is, why would we take it, that kind of stuff. But it's kind of remarkable to see, in a way, saber rattling and war talk about Greenland and a little less or so Canada. I was concerned about Canada. I was more concerned we were going to invade Canada at one point when they were saying the fentanyl comes from Canada and they're killing Americans. I'm like, oh my God, they're next to be weapons of mass destruction. But they kind of backed off that. So it seems more like a tariff thing. But
Yeah.
I mean, are you concerned that we lived through the lead up to the Iraq war? What would stop Trump from just ordering the military to go invade Greenland? Forget NATO, that part of it. Just what would prevent him?
Well, we'll know that he's serious about invading Greenland if he gets another note from his podiatrist. That's how we'll know it's really on.
He's a bone spur. He still has a bone spur.
Yeah, still has those bone spurs. Trump says he wants to invade Greenland, and 60% of Republicans say that's a good idea. That shows you the power of this cult. If Trump said that he wanted to invade Legoland, they would do that too. So I think it's really instructive and helpful to probably look at this as a cult, but it's kind of reassuring to know how most cults end. They don't end well. We use that expression a lot of times. They're drinking the Kool-Aid. Well, we're sort of forgetting about what was in the Kool-Aid. I mean, everybody who drank the Kool-Aid died. So I'm not saying that half the country is going to die because something like half the country thinks Trump has good ideas, but it is worth remembering that a number of people drank bleach because Trump said that that was a good idea. So we do have a cult situation here. But, I really feel all these things, Greenland, the third term, which I'm sure we'll talk about,
Sure, why not?
confusing about that. I feel like what ties all these things together is that they're great distractions. They keep people's mind off of what's really going on. And it's remarkable how they distract the mainstream media. I find that very, very impressive how the New York Times will just take dictation from anything Trump says. If he does say, I think, there's a scene in the Woody Allen movie Bananas. I don't know if you remember that from
Sure. I don't remember as vividly as Annie Hall or Manhattan. Those are two of my favorite, but
50 years ago. And there's a scene where it all takes place in a South American country that's a quote unquote banana republic.
Yep.
And at one point, the rebel leader takes over and he's now running the country. And Woody Allen shows how he's suddenly become drunk with power and he has all of these crazy ideas. And one of his proclamations is he says, from this day forth, everyone under the age of 15 years old will be 15 years old. And that's kind of the level of what we're hearing from Trump. Trump is saying things like, I gotta have Greenland, gotta have it. And it's being treated by the New York Times as if it's a legit proposal. And, they'll have headlines like Trump's desire to acquire Greenland raises concerns. And it's like, no, he's like a fucking senile, crazy ass guy. Why are you even humoring him with this, normalization, this sandwashing?
Right, Andy, when you talk about how the cult will go along whatever he wants, I remember vividly during the campaign, near the closing weeks, he did a rally in Michigan, and it's all his white people, and he brought up the Muslim mayor of the town, and he introduced them, and he's Muslim and whatever, and the crowd barely applauded, like, I thought we're supposed to hate these people. And then he brought another Muslim, and he actually goes, come on, give him a round of applause, and everyone starts cheering, and he brought in a mom on and stuff. So they were like, you told us to hate them. And then they cheered, and now they're kind of okay with Muslims. It's kind of a bizarre world we live in where the ruler has said that until tomorrow when he says no. So it's kind of I vividly remember that because I was on MSNBC and they played it right after it happened. I'm like, look, they barely applauded. And Trump even had to say, come on, give him a round of applause. He's a good guy. Because he thought it was a joke. Like they were going to just let a Muslim run around and they were going to beat him up or something like that. Like, we got a Muslim for your enjoyment. Go get him. And now Muslims are replaced by transgender Americans. In his first campaign, Muslims were certainly one of the goes to demonize, to even ban us from the country. And now you don't hear any of that kind of language. Even his new ban, his travel ban, is far from being a Muslim ban. It's a lot of countries, and it's kind of almost like a metric of you can get off the list. It's vastly different. And part is that Jared Kushner got $2 billion from Saudi.
Right.
Trump's like, I hate the Muslims. $2 billion, Muslims, best people ever. All the Abduls, I know the Abduls, they're good people. That kind of thing. Abdul Akbar, like that kind of stuff where he's transactional in everything. And so I'm chatting with Andy Borowitz. So Andy, what do you make of, I want to talk about this, and I'm so glad you were booked when I saw it, the White House Correspondents Association and the role comedy plays. And I try to make people care about this issue. I wrote about it. I talked about it with my friend Joy Reid yesterday. I talked about Stephanie Miller's show today. And I want to tell people this is bigger than a comedian. This is much deeper. When the White House correspondents, as in journalists, are canceling a comedian because the regime doesn't like the comics material, there's something deeply afoul here. There's something deeply alarming here. So what is your take on them? They cancel Amber Ruffin the day after the Trump administration flagged her comments on a Daily Beast podcast saying she's inciting violence. And literally the next day, Eugene Daniels like, I was thinking about this weeks ago. And he literally put a statement. Weeks ago, we were kind of re-envisioning the dinner without someone who might anger Donald Trump, I guess. But I think it's deeply concerning. What's your take on it?
Well, I think that it's the latest example of the media, the corporate media, showing either anticipatory or just actual obedience. It's not really anticipatory obedience anymore because now Trump is in the White House and is threatening people. So it's cowardly, it's embarrassing. Also, I think when there are the eventual tribunals that I'm envisioning for all these quislings, they're going to have a lot to answer for, the White House Correspondents Association brass who made this decision. But here's where I think the demotion or the exclusion of Amber Ruffin is significant. And this is actually a good news part of the story. What does Trump fear the most? Trump fears being laughed at.
Right.
Trump fears mockery. Trump is not afraid of a recession. He said he's not afraid of car prices going up. He's not afraid of inflation. He says, yeah, that maybe egg prices go up a little bit. He's very chill about all the suffering that he's inflicting on the country. The one thing he is terrified of is being laughed at. And that's where Americans have a lot of power. Americans like comedy. Americans like to laugh. This is not North Korea yet. So I say to all of you trolls out there, keep it up, keep trolling, keep getting at this guy, because somebody who's really strongly in power, has a really firm grip on power, can stand mockery. It's the bullies who have a very loose grip on power, like Donald Trump, who have the most to fear from people laughing at him.
Look, I performed comedy in the Middle East, partly as a hostage, but partly, to get my freedom. But no, I produced a comedy festival in Jordan. I performed across the whole region. And the one rule in every single country was the same. You can't mock the leader of the country that we're in. And it wasn't always coming from the top. It wasn't like the kings, like, you can't mock me. It was people around them. But they understood that these people want, generally, King Abdullah, a little different in Jordan, but generally they want to be feared. Right? They don't want to be laughed at. They don't want to be a punchline. And for Trump, that's very real. Like, he wants you to fear him. He doesn't, he looks kind of stern on purpose, like it's a show. To us, it's a joke because we've known him forever being in the New York, New Jersey area. We know he's a clown and a buffoon. So he's acting. It's like very Mussolini-esque with his buffoonery, but that's what Mussolini did on purpose. But he does it. So Trump doesn't want to be laughed at. He wants you to fear him. And I think it's remarkable. He's never gone to the White House Correspondents' Dinner. He was not going to this one. There was no need for the White House Correspondents' Association to give in. And Amber Ruffin even said, they told me to both sides the comedy. And she's like, only one side is in power. Only one side is bad. So shouldn't I be? I went to the dinner. I went to a few dinners. I saw Trevor Noah. And generally the jokes are about Biden. Biden's sitting right there. Not there weren't too many jokes about Trump that I can remember. Trump was just a candidate then. So I think the idea of the White House Association saying both sides of the comedy is bullshit in itself. You don't tell a comedian. You hire the person, check them out. If you don't like what they're going to do, don't. No one made you hire Amber. Go pick the Rich Little of today, someone who's going to be unoffensive and mock everyone. I mean,
But
seriously.
didn't George W. Bush pick Rich Little one year and he like totally bombed? Didn't that happen?
He
Like,
did, but I think that the correspondence association picks at least that's the way it's been. It's their dinner, not the president's dinner.
right.
So,
Oh, okay. So
but
maybe,
they picked him. But the best, of course, was Colbert with the Bush
yes.
thing. That was by
Yeah.
far, I have to go
Yeah,
back and find.
wonderful, wonderful. I mean, that was epic, actually. But yeah, I mean, there aren't two sides in comedy. You can't. I mean, it's a ridiculous premise. And by the way, there aren't really two sides in journalism. I mean, I think that's one of the greatest comments I ever read was by Molly Ivins, who not only was a great
Mhm.
comedian, great humorist, but a really great reporter. I mean, people sort of forget about her journalism. She was a wonderful journalist, and saw an interview with her. And she said, everybody who writes has a bias. She said, I have a bias. Everybody who writes for a newspaper has a bias. And it's important to know what our biases are, but it's a myth to think that there's something called objective journalism. There just isn't. It's
Right.
better. It's like if I read something by Dean Obeidallah, I know that you're coming from a liberal point of view. And so I can judge what you write based on that. You're not trying to pretend that you're objective. But the New York Times, when they bend over backwards to act like they're being all fair and objective, it's just a complete myth. It doesn't exist. There's no such thing as objective journalism. It's better to have a writer who has a point of view, is using critical thinking, and same with the thing. And then if you decide, hey, I think this guy is like a left-wing hack, he's bullshit, or he's a conservative hack, I don't like him, that's fine. But let's not try to create this both sides nonsense where like we're claiming that it's possible to be kind of in this, you know, Zen pure place where you don't have any opinions about everything. It just doesn't exist as long as we're humans. We have
I think it reminds me when I used to write for CNN Opinion, and I would get comments from readers. This was so biased. Like, this is all opinion. I'm like,
people
it
just
says
showing his opinion.
CNN opinion on it. It's an opinion article. It's an op-ed. Don't you get it? And the people on the right, they didn't get it. Like, this is how dare you write an opinion in the opinion section. I wasn't writing news articles. I was writing the opinion section. And then the new owners of CNN got rid of that last year. I wrote for there 10 years. I mean, me and many people, but I wrote for weekly for 10 years. And the new people got rid of it at CNN because they were pivoting to the center and
Right.
there were too many left writers. So instead of getting rid of a few, they're like, just get rid of all of it. Like, we don't have to even explain then. We're like, it was a budget cut. We got rid of everybody. And that's how they did it. And that's how it goes. So, Andy, when you say about two sides, there was a famous quote by Edward R. Murrow, and I'll paraphrase it because I can't remember it exactly, but he said essentially is there are not two equal and opposite sides in every story. He refuses to accept that there are two equal sides to every
Yeah.
story. And that's the truth. There are not. There are not. There's not two sides to the Klan and neo-Nazis. Not like, well, you know what? Let's give the Nazis a second here because they do make some good points about this. No, they're not two sides to it. They're scumbags. You could write that they're scumbags. You're a scumbag if you try to find the second side. If you both sides, that kind of stuff. So it's a remarkable thing, and I think that's an important point. And yeah,
Well,
I'm
Donald Trump,
I'm
of
a
course.
left wing hack. I'm a left wing. That's my thing should be called left wing hack. My Substack would rename it.
I mean, after Charlottesville, of course, Trump did say there are very fine people on both sides. And I mean, truth be told, he really only liked one of those sides. He liked the tiki torch waving Nazis. Those were the fine people. The others were kind of like below average, not so great people. But I think he thought he was being fair there. He was saying very, very fine people on both sides. No, it's bullshit. And CNN, I mean, I always thought that like if Jesus ever comes back, and I know that I'm not an authority on Jesus. I don't know exactly when he's coming. I
Right.
assume on some signal chat somewhere it's going to be divulged, and I hope to get in on that. But when
Right.
Jesus comes back, it's going to be a big story. And the way CNN will cover it is they'll have a split screen and they'll have Jesus on one side and Satan on the other side. And they'll kind of go back and forth for maybe 2 minutes. And then they'll say, gentlemen, we have to leave it there. And that's how they'll handle it. Because and they have this guy, and again,
Scott Jennings.
Scott
He's
Jennings.
the villain. He was cast as the villain.
I mean, he's the heel. He's the
Right. He's cast
WWE
as the villain.
heel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And boy, is he good at it. He is such a great jerk. He's so rude. He's so appalling. Like, he's a guy, like, if you were at a cocktail party and you saw Scott Jennings and Ted Cruz, you'd ditch Scott Jennings to talk to Ted Cruz. You'd say,
That's
like,
how bad.
it's gonna be so much more pleasant hanging out with Ted. Maybe he'll give me some Cancun travel tips. I don't know. But Scott Jennings is the worst guy. So they are actually casting that network
Right.
now like a WWE show. It's like we've got the biggest heel around, but that's their idea of fairness. It's just
I'll
we're gonna have some reasonable, nice people, and then we're gonna have the biggest asshole we can find.
I could just see Jake Tapper with Jesus and Satan. It's like we're gonna have to leave it there. We're just to agree to disagree, won't we,
Yeah,
fellas?
exactly.
We're gonna be right back.
Aaron Burnett, absolutely. And they would have to say that, Satan brings up some very good points here, Jesus. Um, and yeah, Jesus would be seen as like a tax and spend liberal. I don't know. But yeah,
It's
they would have to do something where they would show a lot of fairness because that's
and 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 I can share. I don't remember the producer's name, although I would divulge it in a second if I could. Years ago, when I used to go on CNN a lot, and it was during the time when Trump was demonizing Muslims. So one of the producers said, "Can you come on and talk about, the thing about why what Trump says is hateful?" And I go, "Yeah, of course." And they go, "Okay, we just have to get someone from the other side." And I go, "The other side?" And I go, I swear to God, I go, what you mean the pro hating Muslim side? And the person like just pause. I go, I don't understand what other side? Like I wasn't being a jerk because I knew, but I'm like, what do you mean the other side? Like so, and
right.
they go, well, they represent the Trump point of view, but I go, but this is bigotry. Like I don't know what the other
Right.
side is. And they go, okay, we'll get back. And then they call back and they go, we're not going to do the segment after all. So instead of having me on just to be like, what he's saying is bigotry, instead they got rid of the segment because someone must have been like, some executive producer was like, yeah, we can't have one side. We can't just have the pro, let's be anti bigotry side. So they literally, I always remember that forever. That's like out of a comedy sketch. Like, you
So
mean,
Dean, you could have been CNN's designated Muslim.
I think for a
You
while, for
could
a
have,
little while
you
I
were,
was.
well, you could have been, if you played it right, you could have been the Muslim Scott Jennings. You could have just been going after all the other side, but they couldn't, I think it's just too bad that they couldn't find a legit other side, the anti-Muslim other side that would be palatable somehow to CNN viewers. But
I No, I used to go on all the time. I was the Muslim guy. I would come on all the time, and I would write about it for CNN. And so it's kind of remarkable. So, by the way, Andy, tomorrow's a big day. Tomorrow's Liberation Day in America. I'm not sure if
I,
you're aware of that. And Steve Bannon just said, I'm not kidding. This is not a joke, that he wants Trump to make this a national holiday. And that because that's what he said. It's just trolling. Like Bannon is very good at trolling, right? So people on the left are getting upset. Liberate. So my view is so he imposes the tariffs, which is our
mhm,
massive tax, and he liberates us from our money. That's what I
right.
guess that the liberation is. It's from our money. It's going to cost you 20% more for the same thing that today is 20% less. So as opposed to like as opposed to World War II, we were like liberated from occupation and oppression, he's going to liberate our money and then use it because it's a tax increase to pay for a tax cut for Elon Musk and the billionaires. I mean, what is your take on Liberation Day? And are you giddy about it? Are you excited about the idea of Liberation Day?
I mean, I think you really explained it well to me because I was under the impression that it was something else because I read something from Pete Hegseth and he said it's going to be Libation Day and he was very excited about it. But so I guess he just got it. He texts very, very quickly, and so sometimes he misses a syllable in there. Um,
Does
I
he put HH? People go, he's saying HH for Heil Hitler. It's like, no, it's happy hour. He's just happy. He's not actually a Nazi. He actually
I
meant a
love
happy
that. I
happy
love
hour.
that. I
Because
love that. Well, you know, um, here's the thing about Trump. Trump is an economic idiot. This is what happens when you elect a guy who's got six bankruptcies. He's working on his seventh right now. And unfortunately, it's the United States of America where we're all living, but he's an absolute economic fool. Like he inherited all this money from his dad and he blew through that. If anybody, with his inheritance had just put it in an index fund or invested it with
Mhm.
Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway, he'd be billions and billions ahead of the game, and he wouldn't have to extort money from like media organizations and Paul Weiss. He'd be so rich beyond his wildest imaginings. But right now he's doing the same thing because he inherited a great economy from somebody named Joe Biden.
Mm-hmm.
And he previously did this from somebody named Barack Obama, Barack Hussein Obama, as
Mm-hmm.
he's sometimes called. And he finds a way to screw that up. And this is something that has been tried. It was tried during the Gilded Age. It was tried by his favorite president, McKinley.
McKinley, yeah.
And it's failed. And generally speaking, the way humans are supposed to work is that we're supposed to learn from experience. We're supposed to learn from history. And you know what's sad, Dean, is I'm coming to the conclusion that we don't. And Donald Trump is a great example of that because he's a great storyteller. So when he tells Americans, you're going to be liberated and we're going to be getting all these untold trillions of dollars in tariffs and we're going to bring manufacturing jobs back. It's a great story. The only problem is none of that is going to happen. What is going to happen is what you described, which is that he will balance, well, not balance, but he will cook the books on the backs of the working man and woman and trans person, and that will be what happens. He won't enrich anybody except for people who are already rich.
No, and you know what? If we were in, say, Trump came in, and I'm being sincere here, not the smartass that I usually am. If Trump had come in and we were at 10% unemployment and we were in the heart of a recession, and he would say, "Look, here's a way out. It's going to cost a little pain in the beginning, but we're going to get unemployment down to 4% if everything goes well here, and the stock market's going to hit all-time records, and inflation is going to come down." We'll be like, "Okay, we're going to suffer," but that's what he inherited. Unemployment was 4%. The stock market was hitting all-time records. Inflation had come back down. He inherited a great economy. There is no need for us to suffer. You can do surgical use of tariffs in certain areas because Biden did and other people have done
Yeah.
it. That's fine. This is a massive tax increase. And if the corporate media would just stop sucking and talk about what it is the biggest tax increase in our lifetime. 20% on everything you're buying, just about, unless it's domestic. But some of the domestic stuff has foreign parts or foreign goods in it. And it's going to raise those prices as well. And Andy, the big thing is our corporate media sucks ass on is not explaining, and I've explained many times on the show, when Trump did a tariff on washing machines, and that was a surgical one in his first term, what happened, as economists have noted, within a month, all washing machines went up 18.5%, including domestically made ones, because they raised their price to right below the 20% tariff. So they were still underpricing their competitor. And that's what happened. So domestic manufacturers raised their price to right under the tariff number because they're still a little cheaper and they make extra money. And it's a windfall. You need a windfall profit tax, and we're not going to get that here. It's absolute bullshit.
Well, we should always be suspicious when the people who tell us that there's going to be some economic pain that we can all get through, the people telling us that are billionaires. We should all be suspicious. When Scott Bessent tells us that we've got to hunker down and deal with rising prices, I want to hear that from a non-billionaire. I want to hear that from a guy who's working two jobs and doesn't have health insurance. If that dude tells me he's prepared to pay 8% higher prices on everything, pay bigger prices on food and on his kids' clothing and on his rent, then I'm down with it. But if Scott Bessent or Howard Lutnick or one of these,
He's a billionaire. He has more money. I was
he
reading
has
about the
even more money.
breakdown. Lutnick has more money.
You know what Lutnick is according to Forbes magazine? I read this recently and I'm so impressed because, Trump always said that he would surround himself with the best people. And Howard Lutnick really is a superlative guy. And I'll tell you why I say that. According to Forbes magazine, he is the most hated man on Wall Street.
Wow.
That takes some doing. I don't know if you've hung out with a lot of people on Wall Street, but again, it's sort of in that Ted Cruz, Scott Jennings category. It's like, wow, really the most hated? You're more hated than all those other assholes? That takes some doing. But
That
apparently,
does. By the way, so today's segment will go as long as Cory Booker speaking on the Senate floor. But I like about Cory Booker, I got to get your reaction to this. Is Cory Booker, it's really a great thing he's doing. He posted yesterday, "I'm heading to the Senate floor because Donald Trump and Elon Musk shown a complete disregard for the rule of law, the Constitution, and the needs of the American people." You can tune in on C-SPAN, YouTube, X, and Facebook. which I thought, and he goes, I will do this as long as physically able. And it made me wonder, how long am I physically able at this point in my life to be able to stand up because and speak for because I have to pee like every 2 hours at this point.
I know.
And
That was
that's been my way since I was
that
like
was
30. It hasn't really changed much, but I just notice it more now because it was like, oh, you're getting older. I'm like, actually, I would wake up every night when I was in my 30s the same way I wake up now. 20 years later, like I'm still doing that. But I don't. I'd have to keep stopping. They're like, stop drinking water. Stop drinking water because you have to keep going to the bathroom. Like I'm a kid. I'm like, but I need to drink water. I have to stay hydrated. Like you gotta. So I don't know. Would you bring a tube? Do you bring a diaper scenario? Like, well, how do we play this
like
out?
looking at it's sort of that astronaut murder situation. Remember that astronaut diaper thing, which I was obsessed with for many, many years, I think turns out to be an urban myth. I think apparently she did not have
Oh,
diapers for that long cross-country trip in that murder plot. And it's too bad because that to me was the best part of that whole story. I mean, David Sedaris wrote this very funny essay a number of years ago about this thing you can buy called Stadium Pal, which is sort of like, it is kind of like a commercially available catheter and the whole,
oh my God.
branding of Stadium Pal. It's like, yes, in a crowded stadium, it truly would be a pal to have something strapped to your leg that you could pee into. But so I don't know if Cory is availing himself of Stadium Pal. I do know one thing that after tomorrow, Stadium Pal will be 20% more expensive. So
That's
that's
it's
all I
important.
know.
Do you
All
know
I
when
know. But I mean, I think you have so many esteemed guests on your show, Dean. I really feel like after Cory has had a couple of days to rest up, you've got to get him on your show, and that's just got to be your first question, which is just like, how did you navigate that? Because
did
that's
like
something we need to know.
I mean, I want it like if he's wearing a diaper and he's giving a speech, do we notice a pause? And he's like he's
Right,
moving a little bit and like, is he wiggling? What is he doing? That kind
right,
of stuff. And so look, I think it's still in the day and age when Democrats have not been the great fighters. I have to be honest now. People always say, and I agree with them, but we have some great fighters. Jasmine Crockett is good. Jamie Raskin's very good. Eric Swalwell, a few others. But when you really take a step back, they're the exception. That's the problem.
right,
We're defining Democratic Party by the exceptions when most of them are so many members of the House. If you ever walk around Congress, you don't even recognize their names because they never go on TV. They're just doing their job as members of Congress, but they're not big fighters either. They go, they do a thing in their district, they come back. But most of them are very quiet or saying things like common ground or running away from things. And so I think the Democratic Party has got to get. I I just wrote an article for Substack about it today, and I talked about it on the show earlier. We don't have the Democratic Party does not have an identity crisis; has a leadership crisis. Like the
right.
base, we know what we're about. Nothing has changed. My values are same as they were before the election in November, and I still want Democrats to fight for them. But I want Democrats to fight. That's the problem. We have a leadership that's making calculated decisions based on focus groups and consultants and say this. Keep talking about the price of eggs. Shut the F up about the price. I don't care about the price of eggs. That was a talking point in the media. We're talking about our democracy and our freedoms. So what do you
Right.
think, Andy? I don't want to I don't want to be slamming Democrats all the time because then listeners get you keep attacking us. No, I want them to be like us. We're fighters.
Well, Will Rogers, who sort of had my gig like 100 years earlier,
Yeah,
but did it better and is rightfully revered by people like me who aspire to follow in his footsteps. Will Rogers said, I don't belong to any organized political party. I'm a Democrat. So this is not a new problem. The Democrats have had moments of being galvanized. They were galvanized behind Obama, and they were, they've been moments where they've had fighters. I mean, um, you could look at somebody like Obama was a great example, but also Bill Clinton was able to bring people together. I don't necessarily agree with a lot of things that he did because I think he brought people together by tacking to the right, which isn't
he did.
something that I agreed with. But there's also a history of that other side, and it's true. You can't really single out the Democrats because both sides have, try to like, you know, their main goal seems to be to stay in power most of the time, and so you get these very sort of mealy-mouthed responses to things. I mean, it was very disappointing. You talk about the Iraq War. It was very disappointing when people like Tom Daschle and Hillary Clinton voted to invade Iraq. Why? I mean, there were millions of people protesting against it, and they took the wrong position. So I think it is a problem, a leadership vacuum, as you put it, but I don't think it's a new problem. I think that politicians, by their nature, are so deeply flawed, and it's true of Republicans, Democrats. And I'm not doing a both sidesy thing here at all.
Andy is. He's
I'm
definitely
just
both
saying
sided.
the whole notion of like they can't all be leaders, so you just need a few who can really take the lead, and we're going to see who that is. Is it going to be AOC? Is it going to be Jasmine Crockett, Jamie Raskin? Adam Schiff has been saying a lot of stuff lately that's been
It could be
fiery.
Cory Booker now. Maybe Booker's
Cory
throwing
Booker,
this
and
is
I
the
think
beginning of
that
2028 is right now.
yeah, I mean, I think Cory Booker is putting his marker in and saying,
Yeah.
look, don't. Cory Booker's an incredibly smart guy. He would be a great candidate for the Republicans,
Yep.
Republicans for the Democrats, excuse me. So I think that we the people have a role to play. There's going to be this big protest on Saturday, on April 5th, and that's people power. We also have to lead. We can't just sit
Right.
back and be scrolling on our phones and saying, who's going to do this for us? Who's going to get us out of this mess? We've got to do it too.
I agree, and I'll be driving my Tesla to that protest. So I'm going to show up and then we just light it on fire. This is kind of remarkable. Okay, last two things. What can we see? Okay, you had a really good article on Trump talking the third term, and tell us. I don't want to because it's funny because Andy writes satire, so it reads like a real article, but it's comedic. So if I give it away, I'm like stealing your joke. So tell us a little bit about your view about your two articles on the third term for Trump.
Well, there are a couple of things about Trump. Trump has been talking a lot about his third term. And I love the way he talks about the Constitution, like says there are things you can do. It's like he's a little bit cagey. And it's like, oh, really? There are things you can do. I thought the Constitution kind of makes it pretty clear what you can and can't do. But he says, no, I've heard there are some things people are saying, some very smart people say there are things you can do. So I'm in favor of him serving a third term in prison. I mean, 4 years to me, that's a good for starters, and I would be all for a constitutional amendment that would say no term limits. He can serve in prison, either consecutively, non-consecutively, I don't care, as long as we want. And then the other story I was on was just it was related to this. It was an issue of just um, whether his arteries could serve a third term because this guy does not seem like a paragon of robust health at the moment. So I'm just wondering, like, can he make it to next week? I don't really know this whole thing of like being around till 2033. Really, I don't really think that's really in the cards, but maybe he knows something I don't know. But it's the whole third term thing again. It's like a shiny object to distract us. I've kind of taken
Yep,
the
yep.
bait away because I need joke material every day, so I take the bait. But we shouldn't be fooled by it. This is a guy whose presidency is in a lot of trouble right now. They're worried about losing an election in Florida. I don't know that they're going to lose it. It's a long shot for them to win it, but the fact that they're worried shows that they know they're in trouble. And that we know that they're worried about upstate New York because they pulled Elise Stefanik's nomination for the
Hmm.
UN last week. So they're worried about that seat. They have a very, very tiny majority in the House, and they're worried about losing it. So let's just keep our eye on the ball. Let's keep our eye on the facts. And every time he opens his mouth about Greenland or a third term, I, of course, have to write about that because I need jokes,
That's what you do.
but everybody else should just ignore it.
The and from a legal point of view, as a lawyer, there's no way he can run for a third term. There's no wiggle room in the Constitution. The 22nd Amendment is very, very clear. And then the 12th Amendment even gets rid of this bizarre scenario like Putin, where he's going to run as the VP and then JD Vance or whatever straw person he puts up there is going to drop out. You can't run as vice president. And the 12th Amendment says, unless you're eligible to be president. So, and that was a way to avoid, someone being born from another country coming in, or someone who's 15
Yeah,
years old being a running mate or something like that. Like you can't,
dude,
that's,
I would rather have either of those scenarios than more Trump. But you know who he really stole this idea from, Dean? And maybe I should be pointing this out,
oh,
perhaps
sorry.
not my Substack, from Vladimir Putin. Because do you remember a
Yeah.
guy named Dmitry Medvedev?
That was his prime minister that he made, and he was his prime minister and he ran the whole show. It's
Yeah,
copying that. Yeah.
yeah. So it's like Trump only steals from the best. People
It's
like, Kim Jong-un, Vladimir Putin.
here,
Um,
here's what I say this with great confidence. And I don't think I'm going to be wrong for various reasons. Trump is not leaving office alive. And I want people to know that he might be there beyond 2028. He might be there in 2029 or 2030. He's not going to run for office. He might just stay there and declare some kind of emergency, challenge it in the courts, tie it up. And when you're commander in chief and you're still president, good luck removing him. Or between now and 2028, the devil says, you've done an amazing job. It's time for you to come home.
Time for you to
Like
come
you've,
home.
it's time to come
Well,
home.
I
Like,
mean,
yeah,
we know what's waiting for him. It's sort of the same thing that's waiting for Bibi Netanyahu. I mean, a lot of legal problems when he leaves office. So, I mean,
right.
there's a certain, that's the problem with all these guys. Like when you elect criminals like Berlusconi, Silvio Berlusconi, or Donald Trump, I mean, that's another thing I'm always trying to remind people that we are not alone. Other countries have elected criminals before. It really sometimes we've elected people who then turn out to be criminals like Rod Blagojevich, but other countries have knowingly elected criminals, and they like having their perch in government because it keeps them out of prison for a
It,
while.
it
For a
does.
while.
And
Um,
the very last thing here in the last minute, Andy, if for some reason Democrats actually win in the Florida race, one of them, or if it gets really close to the point or two, then I would have to predict you will see Republicans between now and 2026 try to pass even more laws in red states, purple states, and even nationally to make it harder to vote for those people who are not going to vote Democrat because they can't let this go, especially Elon Musk. He's fearing he'll be prosecuted or something. I mean, I don't know.
yeah, I mean, we're still dealing with a minority party that has succeeded on the basis of gerrymandering and the way our crazy electoral college system is set up and the way our Senate system really rewards all these very sparsely populated Western states. So, but the fact is, I mean, in the fullness of time, they're going to fail big time because the demographics aren't in their favor. I know they made some inroads with younger people
Right.
and with Muslims because you weren't on
Uh,
CNN warning everybody against voting for them. But
yeah,
yeah, you
wasn't
don't think
me.
you stopped it?
Wasn't me. So the all right, Andy, my friend, if people want to sign up for your Substack, where can they go? Last moment here before I let
They
you
can
go.
just go to borowitzreport.com, or if you Google Andy Borowitz, and once you get past all the items saying Andy Borowitz is an asshole, you'll get to borowitzreport.com and you just go to that.
Thank you, my friend Andy. I really appreciate it.